Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Harrah's Hoosier Park. Michael Chamberlain here with Jacob Reinheimer as we are ready to talk about the Road to the Kentucky Derby, as we have our Road to the Derby Challenge contest. And Jacob, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Always kicks off our contest season here at Harrah's Hoosier Park with the lead up to live racing here. With that said, always a great contest year in, year out. We've got 9 weeks of racing here on the Kentucky Derby Trail. You have a chance to win a share of $3,500 if you play along with our contest. Of course, have that $2,000 grand prize at the very end if you're the final points winner at the end of the year. But we draw three $25 winners every single week, every single race of the contest. So good money to be made if you play along with us here for the Road to the Derby.
And we will have races and videos each of the weeks where we do have contest races. And the first of those races as part of the contest is the Grade 3 Holy Bull down at Gulfstream Park in Florida. We just had a big race in Florida last week, the Pegasus World Cup, won by National Treasure, who won the Preakness last year, staying hot in 2024. We've got a field of 8 going a mile and a 16th here. Basically the first steps on the road to the Florida Derby, which goes to the Kentucky Derby. Gulfstream Park has this field of 8, headlined by the horse that won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, Fierceness.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in the lead up to this race. Kind of similar to what we saw last year on these road to the Florida Derby, where Forte kind of opted to take some time off after the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. They opted to wait for him last year until the Fountain of Youth. They come back a little bit earlier here with Fierceness, and you think if he chose his A game here, he looks much the best in this field.
That is true. Given that there's a lot of horses in this race that were in the Mucho Macho Man, which was run on New Year's Day at Gulfstream Park. In this field of 8, there is a total of 4 horses from that race. Additionally, other horses that have run in graded stakes company, including Dancing Groom, who was 3rd in the Grade 1 Champagne at Aqueduct back in early October, and Domestic Product, who ran up the track in the Grade 2 Remsen in early December at Aqueduct as well. Both of those horses making equipment changes. Dancing Groom adding blinkers, Domestic Product taking the blinkers away.
Yeah, and I think Domestic Product's an interesting one with trainer Chad Brown, a horse that I actually liked a little bit underneath Fierceness if I think Fierceness is going to beat, which I don't think he is. I think if you're playing the Road to the Derby contest and you're just going for points instead of money, like you would be for the Road to the Derby contest, I think Fierceness is the one to select here.
Well, let's take a look at the selections as we do both agree on number 7, Fierceness, trained by Todd Pletcher. That win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was a complete reversal from what happened in the Champagne because Fierceness did not fire on the sloppy track that day. But really, you can't say that was a big problem because the time before, Fierceness won at Saratoga on a muddy track and put up a Beyer speed figure of 95 and did that 10 points better in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in Southern California with that 6.5 length victory at the Breeders' Cup on November the 3rd. That was the first time John Velasquez rode Fierceness. For trainer Todd Pletcher, and John Velasquez will ride again.
Yeah, and it's interesting if you go back to that Champagne Stakes. That race kind of went wrong for Fierceness, kind of from the start, bobbled at the start, had to check up the back stretch where he got in some traffic troubles, made a wide move on the final turn, and just kind of finally tired. I don't think the horse was quite himself anyway on that day, and I think Todd Pletcher said as much going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. With that said, the Juvenile couldn't have been any better. Pushed the pace, everything went right, and then he was a dominant winner in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
And he did it at odds of 16-1, which should not be forgotten. Fierceness was not that well considered, but he went out and barreled home to a 6.25 length victory in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Now, your second pick is one of the horses you've already mentioned here, that being Domestic Product, number 6.
Yeah, as you already mentioned, they are going to take the blinkers off here for Domestic Product for trainer Chad Brown. Comes here to Gulfstream Park. After racing at Aqueduct, was no good in the Remsen, as you mentioned, finished up the track a little bit. With that said, they take the blinkers off. I think Chad Brown will have him ready to go. This is a horse that's shown some ability. Won at Aqueduct, 2 back in Maiden Special Weight Company, a winner by 4 lengths there. I know you're going to get the distance here with the mile and a 16th. He's already raced at a mile and an 8th, so I don't have any trepidation there. I really do think Domestic Product, if you're looking for a little bit of a price outside of Fierceness, I do think he's the one to look at here.
And I am using that Mucho Macho Man race basically as the key race for everything underneath Fierceness. The 3 horses I have were 3 of the 4 horses from the Mucho Macho Man in this race, starting with the 3 Otello, who was by Curlin out of an Escandarea mare, won each of the 2 previous starts, one in New York in November to break the maiden, and then won the Mucho Macho Man as the betting favorite on January 1st. Christophe Clement, who is usually a really strong trainer for turf horses, has a horse on the Derby Trail here with number 3 Otello. Luis Saez, who won the Mucho Macho Man in the saddle here, will ride again.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You go back to that Mucho Macho Man. Everything kind of worked out in his favor. He got to just sit just off a pretty hot pace there early in the stages there. Got to ride the rail around the last turn and then shook loose late. He was just getting revved up down by the wire, though, so I don't mind the added 16th of a mile here for Otello. I think he's going to fit here nicely, and I think he's probably going to be the clear second choice behind Fierceness.
And that's your third choice in here. The fourth choice for you and the third choice for me is the 2 Inveigled, who we should mention the boss likes. That was Rick Moore's horse. He made a point of sending us an email to say that he liked Inveigled in here. Irad Ortiz Jr. riding for trainer Jane Sibeli. This one did win with Irad in the saddle at Gulfstream on December 9th, was 4th in the Mucho Macho Man. Didn't really get the best trip in that race, kind of had to hold up at the quarter. I watched the replay of this race yesterday to kind of take a look at it, and again, Inveigled really didn't have the best of the trip, and I really think that a bit of a clearer effort here could help this horse jump forward a little bit. I do have this one third as a matter of the picks, but it would not surprise me if this horse did better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you go back to that Mucho Macho Man. He was kind of riding right next to Otello throughout the mile. With that said, the pace setter started to struggle on the far turn. Otello got to go up the inside, and Inveigled had to go to the outside and kind of cost himself a little bit of ground there. Was firing in the lane, just had too much work to do. With that said, I think Otello was going to outsprint him in the lane either way, and that's kind of why I opted to put him ahead of Inveigled. But I do think a little bit better trip. I think he can certainly factor underneath on the ticket.
And the fourth pick for me is the 8, a C Streak. This one has never missed the money in 4 previous starts, has hit the board in both previous Gulfstream starts, but is yet to win at Gulfstream Park, was third in the Mucho Macho Man after having the lead in the stretch, then got passed by Otello and First World War in that race. Ended up holding on for third, which I thought was a good sign. I went off at 9-1 in there after being a less than even money favorite in the race previous with Optional Claiming Company. So C Streak will be my fourth pick in here. And one other note I want to mention as far as Fierceness, the only other 2 horses that have gone around 2 turns in this race are the 2 horses we mentioned that are making the equipment changes. Dancing Groom won a 1 1/16 at Churchill Downs back in late November, and Domestic Product, your second pick, has not only 1 but 2 races going around 2 turns at the mile and an 1/8 distance at Aqueduct, 1 in October, 1 in December. So because the mile race at Gulfstream is a 1-turn sprint. They have that elongated shoot down there. So that is something to keep in mind as well. Fierceness, Domestic Product, and Dancing Groom, the only horses that have gone around 2 turns previously. But quick look at the picks once again. 7-3-2-8 for me, 7-6-3-2 for Jacob. As we both think that Fierceness obviously is going to be a strong favorite in here. Should win coming back off the layoff, but that's why they run the races. Some wild things do happen here, but I think Fierceness is a solid top pick.
Yeah, and it's interesting. This is the first chance we get to see the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Champion come back here. Todd Pletcher always has his horses ready to go when they're on the Derby Trail. I really don't have much concern about the layoff first start since that juvenile win. I expect him to kind of be firing on all cylinders. I don't necessarily think he has to have his A game to win this race either. I think he could win with his B game against this bunch.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing that really else stands out in here, so I think it's a good, nice spot to bring Fierceness back. I don't want to use the word soft, but I do think that it is a spot that is a little easier than some others. For example, the Southwest, which is also going to be run on Saturday after a weather delay at Oaklawn. That race has got a field of 12, and that race is going to be very, very competitive.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to be interesting. I do think, with that said, that even with the smaller field of 8, I think there's quite a bit of early speed in this race. It's going to be interesting to see the tactics off the gate. With that said, like we both said, I think Fierceness is clearly the one to beat, and it's going to be interesting to see just how he comes back.
Absolutely. As we take our first trip on the road to the Derby here at Harrah's Hoosier Park, we will have another video for you with our next race next week. But I think we only have 1 week where we are off with no videos coming up here, and that doesn't happen until March. So you'll be seeing a lot of us on the YouTube channel. You want to be sure to keep an eye on that, and be sure to be here to enter the contest as well. The Road to the Derby contest kicking off this Saturday at Harrah's Hoosier Park. For Jacob Reinheimer, I'm Michael Chamberlain, wishing the best of luck to you all.